Moved in with my boyfriend when he promised to propose, but found out he's had the ring for 6 months. Now that he's finally planning to propose, I don't love him anymore. I'm in a really weird situation and I don't know what to do. My partner and I have been together for about 3 years now. We met at this small food festival in a town a couple hours away from where we live now. He was there with some friends, I was there with my sister, and we just kinda hit it off. It wasn't some magical rom-com moment or anything, but we exchanged numbers and started dating pretty soon after. When we first met, I wasn't even looking for a relationship. I had gotten out of a pretty serious thing about 6 months before and was just enjoying being single. My sister practically dragged me to this food festival because she didn't want to go alone. I remember it was raining earlier that day and I almost bailed, but she guilted me into going. Funny how life works sometimes. Anyway, my now partner was standing in line for this food truck that had these amazing looking tacos. I got in line behind him, and we just started chatting about which tacos looked best. His friends had wandered off to get beer or something, so he was alone. We ended up sitting at the same picnic table to eat our food, and the conversation just flowed really naturally. My sister kept giving me these obvious he's cute looks, which was embarrassing, but whatever. Before we left, he asked for my number. I hesitated for a second, but something made me give it to him. He texted me that same night to say he enjoyed meeting me, and we set up our first date for the following weekend. Things were good. Like, really good for a while. He's smart, has a stable job, is funny when he wants to be, and generally treats me well. I thought we were on the same page about our future. We talked about marriage, kids, all that stuff you're supposed to talk about when you're serious. For the first year or so, everything seemed perfect. We rarely argued, we had similar interests, and we just enjoyed spending time together. He would come over to my place a lot since I had a nicer apartment that I shared with my friend from college. His place was this tiny studio that barely fit his stuff, let alone 2 people comfortably. He met my parents after about 4 months, and they liked him well enough. My dad is hard to impress, but even he thought my partner was a decent guy, which is basically a glowing endorsement coming from him. I met his parents a month later. His mom was super welcoming, but his dad seemed kind of indifferent. My partner later told me his dad is just like that with everyone, so I tried not to take it personally. About a year and a half ago, he started dropping hints about proposing soon. He'd casually mention marriage when we'd see other couples getting engaged or make comments about what our wedding might be like. He'd ask questions about what kind of rings I liked, and I was honestly excited. I even told my sister about the rings I liked, more on that later. I remember one night we were watching some terrible reality show where someone proposed, and he turned to me and said, "When I propose, it won't be like that. It'll be something meaningful." I was so excited I could barely sleep that night, thinking it might happen any day. But soon never seemed to arrive. Whenever I gently ask about our timeline, he'd say something vague like it's coming or I'm working on it, but nothing concrete ever materialized. At first, I was anxious about it, then hopeful every time we'd go somewhere nice, then excited when special occasions would come around. And then eventually, I just stopped caring. There was this one time, maybe a year ago, when we went to this fancy restaurant for our anniversary. I was sure he was going to propose. He was acting nervous all night, kept checking his pocket, and even the waiter gave us this knowing smile. But then dinner ended, we went home, and nothing. When I casually asked if he had been planning to propose that night, he got defensive and said I was putting pressure on him. We didn't talk for like 2 days after that. Then things just went back to normal, like it never happened. Here's where it gets complicated. A few months after all these hints started, he told me that he wouldn't propose until we lived together first. He said he needed to make sure we were compatible as roommates before taking that step. This wasn't what we'd initially discussed. I told him pretty early on, like 8 to 9 months into our relationship, that I wasn't comfortable moving in with someone unless I was engaged to them. It's just how I was raised and a personal boundary I had. He seemed to understand back then. We had this whole conversation about it when we first started getting serious. I specifically remember saying, "I know it might sound old-fashioned, but I don't want to live with someone unless we're engaged." And he nodded and said, "That makes sense. I respect that." So I thought we were on the same page. But then suddenly he's saying he won't propose until we live together? It felt like a complete reversal. When I reminded him of our previous conversation, he said something about how he hadn't really thought it through back then, and now that we were actually at that stage, he realized he needed to know we could live together before committing. I tried to explain that for me, moving in together was a commitment, which is why I wanted the engagement first. But he wouldn't budge. He kept saying things like, "What if we move in after getting engaged and then realize we can't stand living together?" Then we'd have to break off an engagement, which would be worse. After weeks of this back and forth, with him constantly bringing up moving in together and me reminding him about wanting to be engaged first, I started to feel like I was being unreasonable. Maybe I was being old-fashioned. Maybe this was just how things worked now. My friend who I was living with thought I should stick to my guns, but another friend said I was being silly and that everyone lives together before getting engaged these days. But eventually, I gave in. I loved him so much that I compromised on this really important boundary. I found someone to take over my lease at the apartment I shared with a friend, which was perfect for me, BTW, and moved into his new place. The whole time, I was thinking, well, at least we'll get engaged soon after. The actual process of moving in was a nightmare. He lived in a different part of town by then, in a slightly bigger place, but it was still his place, not ours. Moving all my stuff there was stressful because he had opinions about where everything should go and what I could keep. I ended up having to put like half my belongings in storage because there wasn't room, according to him. The first few weeks of living together were actually pretty good. We settled into a routine quickly, and there weren't any major issues. He was cleaner than I expected, and we didn't fight about household chores or anything. But I noticed that all the decisions about our home were still being made by him. What furniture to keep, what to hang on the walls, even what brand of coffee to buy. Individually, these things seemed too small to argue about, but put together, it felt like I was living in his space rather than our space. It's been about 8 months since I moved in, and still nothing. The resentment has been building slowly but steadily. It's not just about the proposal, it's about how whenever we disagree on something, I'm always the one who gives in. He doesn't compromise. Ever. I've brought this up before, and he acknowledges it's an issue, but nothing changes. I remember a specific conversation we had maybe 3 months after moving in together. We were deciding where to go for a weekend trip, and I wanted to go to the beach while he wanted to go hiking. After going back and forth for a bit, I just said, you know what, we always end up doing what you want. I noticed that I'm always the one compromising. He looked genuinely surprised and said, I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. We can go to the beach if you want. And guess what? We went hiking that weekend. Somehow, between that conversation and actually making plans, it shifted back to his preference. This happens all the time. He'll acknowledge the issue in the moment, maybe even apologize, but nothing actually changes. Then yesterday, my sister calls me all excited. She's terrible at keeping secrets and blurts out that my boyfriend bought the ring a while back and is planning to propose next week. Apparently, he had asked her to help him finalize the choice between a few rings I had mentioned liking. She thought I was feeling down lately because I was still waiting for a proposal and wanted to cheer me up. According to my sister, he bought the ring like 6 months ago. 6 months. So he's had it this whole time, even while I was getting increasingly frustrated about the lack of proposal. She said he wanted her opinion on which one I'd like best out of the ones I had mentioned, and she helped him pick the perfect one. She described it to me, even though I told her not to, and it does sound like something I would have loved a year ago. But that's not why I've been feeling low. The truth is, I think I've fallen out of love with him. It's been a gradual process, but all the waiting and the compromise and the one-sided decision-making has just killed something inside me. I've tried to convince myself that I still want this, but I don't think I do anymore. I can't pinpoint exactly when it happened. There wasn't some big fight or dramatic moment. It's more like the slow drip of water on a stone, eventually wearing away what was once solid. I realized a few weeks ago that I don't get excited when he texts me anymore. I don't look forward to him coming home from work. Sometimes I even find myself wishing for some alone time when he's around. Last month, I went to visit my parents for a weekend by myself, and I felt this enormous sense of relief being away from him. That should have been a huge red flag, but I brushed it off as just needing some space. But now I'm wondering if it was more than that. He's been talking about having an autumn wedding and seems genuinely excited now. He's arranged this whole mini trip back to the town where we met, which makes sense now. He's been trying to get me to take time off work for this, but I couldn't get the leave approved. I know exactly when and where he's going to propose now, and the thought just fills me with dread rather than joy. He's put a lot of thought into this proposal from what my sister says. He's planning to take me to the exact food truck where we met, which apparently still exists, and then to this scenic overlook nearby for the actual proposal. He's even contacted some local photographer to capture the moment. The amount of planning makes me feel even worse about not wanting this anymore. I feel trapped. Part of me thinks I should just say yes because everything is arranged. He bought the ring, my family knows. But then what? I get married to someone I'm not in love with anymore? That seems like a recipe for disaster. My sister is so excited about this whole thing. She keeps texting me random wedding related stuff now that she thinks I know about the proposal. My mom called the other day and made some comment about how she always knew he was the one for me, which makes me think my sister told her too. The pressure feels overwhelming. But saying no feels cruel too. He has no idea I feel this way. From his perspective, everything is fine. We don't fight much, because I always give in. We're getting along fine living together, because I adapt to whatever he wants, and he probably thinks we're heading toward a happy future. Last night, he was talking about maybe having kids in a couple of years after we're settled into married life. He has this whole timeline planned out apparently. Marriage this year, buy a house next year, start trying for kids the year after. And all I could think was, I don't want any of this with you anymore. But I just nodded and said it sounded good. I think part of the problem is that I've gotten so used to not expressing my true feelings with him that now I don't know how to start. How do you tell someone who thinks everything is great that you're miserable? Especially when that misery has built up so gradually that there's no one thing to point to? I don't know what to do. Do I warn him somehow before the proposal? Do I say yes and then break it off later? Do I let him go through with the proposal and then say no? There's no option here that doesn't hurt him, and despite everything, I don't want to do that. I still care about him as a person. We've shared a lot over the past 3 years. I know his family, he knows mine. We have mutual friends who think we're perfect together. Ending this won't just affect us, it'll create this ripple effect through our social circle. So, Wibta, if I say no? Some additional context, this isn't my first serious relationship. I was with someone all through university and for a bit after. That guy actually wanted to marry me pretty early on once we got our first jobs, but there were other issues I couldn't ignore, so I ended things after trying to work on them for about a year. So it's not like I'm just desperate to get married to anyone. My ex from university was actually kind of the opposite of my current partner. He was almost too eager to commit. We'd been dating for maybe a year when he started talking about engagement. I was still finishing my degree, and he had just started his first job. The timing felt completely wrong to me. Plus, he had this jealousy issue that was becoming problematic. He would get upset if I spent too much time with my friends or stayed late at the library. I tried working with him on it, even suggested couples counseling, but he didn't see it as a big deal. Eventually, I realized I couldn't spend my life with someone who didn't trust me, no matter how much he wanted to get married. Anyway, back to my current situation. I haven't been subtle about the engagement thing. I've directly asked him several times over the past year and a half what's holding things up when he kept saying soon, and he always assured me it was coming. It wasn't until after I moved in that he finally admitted he had been waiting for us to live together first, even though he already had the ring. There was this one conversation maybe 4 months ago when I just flat out asked him, "Do you still want to marry me? Because you keep saying it's happening soon, but then nothing happens." And he got this panicked look on his face and said, "Of course I do. I'm just waiting for the perfect moment." Which now seems like a complete lie since he apparently had the ring already and was just waiting for me to move in, despite knowing how I felt about that. I think what bothers me most is that I can't trust him to be straightforward about important things now. If he's known all along that he wouldn't propose until we lived together, why not just say that instead of stringing me along? And if he can do that with something this important, what else might he be misleading me about? I don't know what to do and I feel like whatever choice I make, I'm the asshole here. If I say yes, I'm lying to him. If I say no, I'm humiliating him after he's planned this whole thing. Is there a way out of this that doesn't make me a terrible person? If you were in his shoes, what would you want me to do? Update. Wow, wasn't expecting this to get so much attention. Thanks to everyone who commented, even those who called me names, there were a lot of you. I can't respond to everyone, but I want to clear up a few things that people seem to misunderstand. First, to those saying I just want to get married and don't care who to, that's completely wrong. Like I mentioned, my ex from university was ready to marry me right after we started working, and I didn't marry him because there were issues I couldn't ignore. If all I wanted was a ring and a wedding, I would have said yes to him. I genuinely thought my current partner and I were a great match at first. To the person who said I led him on by staying with him, how exactly? I communicated my feelings about wanting to get engaged before moving in together very clearly. He's the one who kept saying he would propose soon without ever doing it. If anyone was led on, it was me. And to all the people saying I'm making a huge mistake because good men are hard to find, is he really that good if he ignores my boundaries and never compromises? I'm not looking for perfection, but basic respect for my feelings doesn't seem like too much to ask. Anyway, a lot has happened since my original post. I decided that pretending everything was fine until the proposal and then saying no would be cruel, so I talked to him on Saturday night. I told him I couldn't be with him anymore. I had been stressing about having this conversation for days. I even wrote out what I wanted to say on my notes app so I wouldn't forget anything important. I waited until after dinner, which he cooked, making me feel even worse, and then asked if we could talk. He immediately looked nervous, which almost made me back out. But I knew I had to go through with it. I started by saying I cared about him deeply, but that I didn't think we should be together anymore. I explained that I felt like my needs and boundaries hadn't been respected, especially with the whole moving in before engagement thing. He didn't take it well, obviously. He said I blindsided him and that he thought we both wanted a future together. At first, he claimed he didn't know what he did wrong, and I had to explain to him about always having his way and knowing I was uncomfortable moving in before engagement but pressuring me anyway. When I pointed out that I always end up compromising while he never does, he admitted that yes, he knew it was an issue but didn't think it was something to break up over. The conversation lasted for hours. He went through what felt like every stage of grief right in front of me. First, he was shocked and in denial, saying things like you can't be serious and this is coming out of nowhere. Then he got angry, accusing me of wasting his time and leading him on. At one point, he even said, "So you're leaving me right before I was going to propose? That's just great timing." Which, by the way, confirmed that he knew exactly what he was doing by making me wait all this time. He knew I was getting frustrated, but he stuck to his arbitrary timeline anyway. After the anger came the bargaining. He started promising all sorts of changes. He'd be more considerate, he'd let me make more decisions, we could go to couples therapy, anything to make it work. He even said we could get married right away if that's what I wanted, which just showed that he still didn't get it. This isn't about getting a ring on my finger, it's about the fact that our relationship dynamic is fundamentally unbalanced. Now that I'm actually leaving, suddenly he's saying he'll work on it and change. But the thing is, I've heard that before, and nothing changed. Plus, I just don't feel the same way about him anymore, and I don't think that feeling is coming back. The hardest part was seeing him cry. In 3 years, I've only seen him cry once before, when his childhood dog died. It almost broke my resolve, but I kept reminding myself of how unhappy I've been. We went to bed in separate rooms that night. I barely slept, and from the sounds of it, neither did he. I could hear him pacing in the living room most of the night. He woke up yesterday morning, which would have been the day he was planning to propose since it was our anniversary, and said he couldn't believe what was happening. Said it didn't feel real because we should be getting engaged but instead we're breaking up. That was tough to hear. He kept saying things like, we were supposed to be at town where we met, right now. I had everything planned. The photographer is probably already waiting at the Overlook. I don't know if he was trying to make me feel guilty or if he was just processing out loud, but either way, it was painful to listen to. He even asked if we could try again, saying our relationship had been happy for both of us and that living together proved we were compatible, regardless of how I felt about the whole situation. He suggested taking a break from each other for a while and then trying again, but I don't think that's a good idea. After more discussion, he started getting practical, asking when I would move out and how we would handle splitting our shared belongings. There's not actually that much since most of the stuff in the apartment was his to begin with, and half of my things are still in storage. These past few days have been really hard, but I know ending things was the right move. We're just incompatible in ways that matter. I started packing some of my things yesterday. It's amazing how quickly 3 years of a relationship can be reduced to a few boxes. He offered to help, which was nice but also awkward, so I told him I preferred to do it myself. I'm already looking for a new place to live. My friend suggested I shouldn't rush to move out since I'm paying half the rent, but this place never felt like home to me because I moved in reluctantly. I know it's my fault for agreeing to move in when I didn't want to, but I can't stay here now. I've been staying with my sister for the past couple nights while I figure things out. She was shocked when I told her what happened, especially since she had been in on the proposal planning. At first, she tried to convince me I was making a mistake, but after I explained everything in more detail, she's been supportive. She's letting me crash on her couch for now, which I appreciate even though her cat keeps trying to sleep on my face. I've spent most of today apartment hunting online. The rental market in our city is pretty competitive, so I might end up having to take something less than ideal just to have my own space again. My budget isn't huge, and most of the places in my price range are either tiny or in less desirable neighborhoods. But honestly, at this point, I'd live in a shoebox if it meant having my own place again. I haven't told my parents about the breakup yet. They really liked him, and I know they're going to be disappointed. My mom has been dropping hints about grandchildren for the past year, so this news is going to hit her hard. I'll probably wait another week or so before telling them, just until I have my living situation figured out. One weird thing, His mom texted me yesterday asking how the trip was going. I guess he hasn't told his family yet either. I didn't know what to say, so I just replied that we ended up not going and that she should talk to him. She sent back a confused emoji, but I haven't heard anything since. I feel bad about that, because I always got along well with his mom. Our friends don't know yet either. We have a lot of mutual friends, and I'm dreading having to explain the situation to everyone. Some of them are definitely going to take his side, which I understand. From the outside, it probably does look like I led him on and then bailed at the last minute. As for him, he's pretty resilient, so I think he'll be okay soon enough. Then we can both move on with our lives. To those asking if I tried talking to him about these issues before, yes, multiple times. Whenever I brought up how I always compromise and he doesn't, he would acknowledge it, apologize, and then nothing would change. Then a few days later we'd have another disagreement about something, like what we should watch, where we should go for dinner, nothing major usually, and again, somehow we'd end up doing what he wanted. Oh, and someone asked why I didn't just refuse to move in until I got engaged if it was such an important boundary. Good question. I guess I loved him enough at the time to override my own boundaries, which was a mistake. I thought the engagement would follow quickly after moving in, since he already had the ring and kept saying it was happening soon. Lesson learned the hard way. So yeah, that's where things stand. I've got apartment viewings lined up for next week, and I'm crashing at my sister's place in the meantime. It sucks, but it's better than the alternative. I keep having moments of doubt, wondering if I'm overreacting or if I should have tried harder to make things work. But then I remember how relieved I felt after finally making the decision to end things, and I know it was the right choice. It's like I can breathe properly for the first time in months. Thanks again for all the feedback, even the harsh stuff. It actually helped clarify my thoughts.